After yesterday's Cleveland Browns charity golf event, the Browns were back on the field today for OTAs, and there was a lot of footage to be seen and consumed. You're going to get the latest thoughts here from myself. Sports Illustrated's Pete Smith, the latest Locked On Browns, ready to go.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound LGB on the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Your host, Jeff Lloyd, at Jeff_LJ_Lloyd, joined today by Browns Digest through SportsIllustrated.com, Mr. Pete Smith. Make sure you're following at _Pete Smith _ Browns OTAs today. A lot of footage, a lot of things to be seen, some comments on the defensive side of the ball. We're going to get to all that. We're going to, like I said, we mentioned the defense. We're going to get to Jim Schwartz's comments, Denzel Ward with a comment on the defense here. We'll get to that segment 3. Some thoughts here, getting to see what some things they're trying to do here offensively as far as, manipulation, just basically playing with defense's eyes. We'll get to all that in segment 2. But some of what you saw today, obviously good work for Elijah Moore. Marquise Goodwin, age don't matter. You got that calling card of speed. You still find a way to use it. Donovan Peoples-Jones as well. Pete, you get to what we saw here today. And, obviously, as I mentioned, Elijah Moore, it seemed like he got some really good work in today. I think the Browns are starting to cultivate a little bit here and understanding, the nuances of a player that they have in Elijah Moore. You saw, there were times where he was lined up in the backfield, jet sweep motion, all that stuff. And of course, this is not too unfamiliar. If you all remember the touchdown Donovan Peoples-Jones scored at home against the Ravens last year, started off in the backfield, shook off Roquan Smith after a short reception, took it in for the house. Marquise Goodwin, when you were track fast, there's a difference between track fast and football fast. Track fast, you're usually fast till the day you die. Darrell Green was one of those guys. Marquise Goodwin, you saw today, scorching many defenders. But, Pete, you're starting to see the weaponry, and there's a lot of avenues you can go with these guys. Because as we talked about in the last episode where you sat down with me, there's different skill sets with all these guys. Every one of these guys can be a capable contributor to this offense, but they all vary in different ways.
Sure. I mean, look, it's all about body types and matchups and everything you can throw at defenses that give them problems. You're going to find defenses with size but not much speed at their corners or the opposite. And the Browns have put together enough of a room that they should be able to create problems for whoever they match up against. And, Elijah Moore seemingly has gotten more targets in a couple OTAs than he did with his entire tenure with the Jets. I'm sure he's pretty happy about that. But you're seeing some other guys get the ball. I mean, you're seeing guys like Cedric Tillman, and certainly Marquise Goodwin had a big day, and that speed element is something that the Browns have been looking for several years, and now they've got both him and Moore, and it's not like they were slow at other spots. They just had bigger guys. So look, it's the stuff, it's what you want to see on May 31st. It's what, the offense is successful. No one has pads on. But at least the offense looks like they're executing the way things are supposed to, which is generally how it's supposed to go in this type of thing. 7-on-7 inherently is an advantage for the offense. So yeah, you want to see those wins. You want to stack those up. You want to have those good days. And then hopefully, by the time you get to August and September, that's carried over and they still look good.
And, well, again, this is what you expect, but there's been times where we talked about these. There's been times where we talked about it in a training camp, and, lesser defenses, and, look, not everybody is there, of course. But, lesser defenses at the time have had better days against the offense. But you look at this, Pete, and the length and the depth of it, if Marquise Goodwin is on the field, he's going to most likely be the fifth option. in any personnel group that you put out there. Most likely he's going to be the fifth option. So you're talking about where you're going to get some scenarios, and what you're basically trying to scheme is all right, well, we're trying to get him basically lined up on your slowest defensive back. So now all the focus would be on an Amari Cooper or a Donovan or an Elijah, David Njoku, whatever. Even keep in mind, different personnel groupings. Obviously, you're more concerned about, what Nick Chubb can do to you. But for what Goodwin can do, and look, we understand this is not going to be, Marquise Goodwin's going to come in here and catch 50 receptions all of a sudden at his age. But when he is on the field and you cannot give him the tension that he requires because of this elite speed, you can see where the playmaking ability is. You can see where, basically he can cut his teeth and make a difference, even as a role player for this offense. You can't teach it. You either have it or you don't. And you saw instances today where, it's if I'm even, I'm leaving, because they don't have many secondary players that possess 4.3 speed.
Well, I think Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome might argue with that, but nevertheless,
I'll give you Denzel. Greg, I'm not so sure, but I'll give you Denzel.
Look, I mean, obviously you see clips floating around. Look how many areas of the field they're attacking at various points. And that Marquise Goodwin play was a pretty simple concept. One guy's running a post, one guy's running a dig. Post opened up, they threw it deep, he was open. But I mean, the point is that you're going to create spacing all over the field that should create running lanes, create run after catch looks and all that. But look, Marquise Goodwin, what he is, and so does the defense. So if he steps onto the field, even though they've still got to deal with Amari Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones and David Njoku and Elijah Moore and all these other guys, they still have to be cognizant of the fact that at any given point, if Marquise Goodwin's on the field, he may be trying to go over the top and put pressure on your defense and force you to potentially change that up to be able to account for him. And that may be simply, dropping your safeties back. But if that happens, then that's potentially more room for Chubb, more room for everybody else. So it's all about stress points. It's all about trying to create different ways to put pressure on the defense. And look, the Browns certainly want to have some easy points. They want to be able to make those big splash plays that give you instant offense and everything else. In addition to that, I mean, so much of last year with Jacoby Brissett, and this is true of any offense, most scoring drives involve an explosive play somewhere in the drive. So the more ability to create explosive plays, the more likely you are to do that, the more likely you're going to score as a result. So they're going to try to get as many guys that can add explosive plays to their offense as possible.
And this is the part for me that I enjoy, obviously. And it's weird when you have 6 wide receivers because, ideally, you play 3-4. You got to start going to the well when guys get injured. But, look, and for Bell and maybe Cedric Tillman, obviously the playing time will be limited. But there are so many avenues that you can kind of go with this. You want to go straight fast. You can put Elijah Moore on the field. You can put Goodwin on the field. Obviously, you can put, Amari Cooper on the field. You can play big with Donovan. You can play big with Cedric. You can play them with the 2 tight ends with Nick Chubb. There are so many variations of the way the Browns can take advantage of matchups. Look, hey, you're a slower secondary. All right, well, we can go fast. You're a smaller secondary. All right, we can go a little bit bigger. So this, for me, is the part I think I'm going to enjoy most of all of this, is just that there is so much varying differences between the guys within the wide receiver room. And even when I said Cooper, I probably should have meant Donovan Peoples-Jones if you wanted to play fast. I mean, you're talking 4-4 and 2-4-3 guys. Good luck trying to deal with all that. And then you got, tight ends over the middle, where Akins is, one of the few players, who has, similar physical abilities as far as catching the ball, running with the ball, as David Njoku. So this, they're just starting to scratch the surface here. And look, a lot of new personnel is brought in here. Deshaun is more comfortable. Coach Stefanski is starting to understand what works best more with Deshaun. And, one of the things that you took away from what you saw at Deshaun today is pretty accurate. Pretty accurate, obviously. And, I'll throw the fist up. Hey, Jacob Phillips, way to take that tipped one there. Get yourself a, pick 6 to the house. But we'll get to the defense a little bit later in segment 3 here. But also what you did see today was some variances in the formations and pre-play, pre-snap motion And we're going to get a little deeper into that here because this is going to be certainly a big, big key here, for the Browns is just trying to mix up and always try to confuse the eyes of the defense. Jeff Lloyd, Pete Smith, your latest Locked On Browns. If you are looking for a delicious snack, but you don't want all the sugar and calories, then you need the best tasting protein bar ever. Built. You got to try this. What makes Built Bars so good? Well, for starters, they are all covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. They come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and cookies and cream. I'm not sure how Built does it, but these bars taste like a candy bar while maintaining amazing macros. And what's even better is that they are healthy. Only 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein. We've talked for years about buying your Built Bars at Built.com. Well, that's all changed. You can head to your nearest Walmart today. Walk to the pharmacy section and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can pick up a 4-bar box of cookies and cream, double chocolate, or coconut puff. If you're closer to Sam's Club, run in, grab a 13-bar box with our hit flavors, brownie batter puff and churro puff. And guys and gals, you can thank me later. I want to thank the everydayers who make Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. We appreciate you all so much. It's all the new traffic rolling through here on Locked On Browns. Easiest way to find us, make sure you subscribe to Locked On Browns on the YouTube channel. Notifications on, so when the content drops, you guys are there and ready for it. And audio-wise, always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. What you see today, Pete, and we saw this when Deshaun first started playing last year. A lot more work from the shotgun formation, running the RPOs out of there. Lots of motion, lots of misdirection, lots of confusing, obviously, what the defense is trying to see. As you were trying to play, with faster players, hopefully trying to play at a faster tempo. The last thing you want to do is give the defense the ability to be able to reset themselves. So it is huddle, line, start to basically, and a lot of it doesn't mean much. And I know everybody saw, Elijah Moore going out of the backfield today, basically just, motioned out and jumped into a slot position, into a quick out. And if anybody knows this, Cleveland Browns fans, obviously you guys know this, it's trying to make the communication on the defensive side of the ball as tough as possible because things are constantly moving. And obviously it takes verbiage from the front to the middle to the back to make sure everybody's on the page. And, a lot, the term basketball on grass exists for a reason. And it's basically just trying to say, we are not going to give you the time to adapt. And hopefully our athletes can out-athlete your athletes.
Yeah, look, the Browns have done this. They obviously did it with Donovan Peoples-Jones in a game last year and scored a touchdown with it. And they could do it with the amount of guys they have. It's about finding ways to get all of them on the field as much as possible. And if you're not, and I don't, it's going to sound like I'm crushing Jerome Ford. If you're not satisfied necessarily with what you have in the backfield, you just put somebody else back there who's a receiver and just add to it. But part of this is also like for funsies, like, you give some of these guys a little sugar now to sort of help them buy in, they get to do some fun stuff in May. And look, if it works and it's like really interesting, then they're not going to just get rid of it. But some of this they may mix in a play here or there and then go, yeah, that was fun. I'm glad you all enjoyed it. We're not doing this in a real game. But look, that's part of this process. You get to sort of mess around with stuff and see what shakes out. But the fact is they have enough athletes to be able to do some of these type of things. And Elijah Moore is a really good athlete, and the Jets completely wasted him. So the Browns, and look, there's also that. That is also
even the worst part. Though is Aaron Rodgers walked in there and said, "Go ahead, let him go. That's all right. Randall Cobb will be fine.
There is undoubtedly a part, and coaches do this, and I know this from firsthand, that will do stuff with a player that another team didn't like, or will use a concept another team did and do it better than them just to do it. Like there's that element of, oh, you want to do that? Okay, we'll do this. Or in this case, you didn't think Elijah Moore was very good. All right, we'll show you how good he can be, and we're going to do all this stuff. So like, it's very lighthearted gamesmanship on that element, but it's like, you get to do all this stuff. And for Elijah Moore, he gets to do all these things that he didn't get to do with the Jets. And and for him, it's a lot of the stuff he got to do at Ole Miss.
Yep.
Because Lane Kiffin, he takes his best dude and will find ways to utilize them in every shape, form possible. And so, like, when you draft these guys, as you and I were both fans of Elijah Moore, and they drafted Harrison Bryant when he was coaching Florida Atlantic. And obviously this past year, you got to watch Jonathan Mingo. Like, you see them do everything you could possibly ask for. There's never a question of, like, can we find clips of him doing this? The answer is always yes in Lane Kiffin's offense. So, like, Elijah Moore got to do all these kinds of things because he was their playmaker, and they used him to do everything because they had to, in part, and because he's really good.
Oh, no doubt. And, this is what you're trying to do, is you're trying to find the best way to make this work and what can be the best version of yourself. And when you have a player like Elijah Moore, where it's okay, he can run deep, he can run short routes, he can run intermediate routes. We can use him in the screen game. We can do that lovely little one that the Kansas City Chiefs, where for some reason they call it a pass play, but basically the snap touch, and you're basically just taking an athlete and saying, we're just going to let you athlete your way through it. But the whole thing with this, Pete, though, is while you're doing this, and on the defensive side of the ball is, all right, well, 8's here, 8's there, 8's there, 8's there. You still got to worry about number 2. You still got to worry about number 11. You got to worry about number 85. And you know what? They did all that for nothing. And here goes Nick Chubb with Wyatt Teller pulling around the left side. And there's our poor slot cornerback being the only one trying to defend it.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious if they'll do some, just how far this goes. Are they going to, like, put Nick Chubb in the sidecar and put, like, Elijah Moore or a receiver in the back, behind him? There's a lot of things you can do. And step one is having guys who are intelligent enough to, execute. And that's, another benefit of having played at LSU or at Ole Miss. In that offense is clearly Elijah Moore was intelligent enough to do all the things, so he can easily move around. DPJ is smart enough to do all that stuff. Having a bunch of smart players allows you to do these things and move around seamlessly, as opposed to, like, if you have receivers who don't know their routes or where to line up or all that stuff, and you're sort of limited in your creativity, which has happened with this team before. So, again, you're going to ultimately figure out what's going to work by the time you get to the season, but this is sort of one of the benefits of being in OTAs and all this stuff. And if you show up, you get to do some of these things. It's an enticement to show up to OTAs.
And, bottom line is putting in work and trying to show yourself. And, look, Elijah Moore, the type of guy who's just basically always had this type of chip on his shoulder. Even now, obviously, even 2 years into the league, that chip is even bigger than it ever was. With everything that went on, with the Jets, where, hey, we liked you. Well, we liked you so much, we took your spot away. We put Garrett Wilson in your spot, which led to, sort of some of the, marriage obviously going really south really quick in New York. The whole Zach Wilson situation certainly did not help anything. And then, hey, maybe now it's water under the bridge. It's new. It looks like Aaron Rodgers is coming here. And then all of a sudden finding out you're expendable, because apparently it sounds like Aaron Rodgers has got his own guys and he's going to work with those guys. But it's not the worst thing in the world. You get to move on. Either way, Elijah Moore was getting an upgrade in quarterback play. The only question of where it was going to be. So now he comes to Cleveland, plays with Deshaun Watson, comes in here with a 100% clean slate. Here he is going into year 3 of his 4-year of his rookie deal. And as much uncertainty and confusion that he maybe had about his own football future, obviously there's a lot more clarity there right now. And understanding that, once again, he basically has the same opportunity that he did when he first walked into the league. But now, at least it looks, for all intents and purposes, he's going to get to do it with a quarterback who has got a proven track record. Pete Smith, Browns Digest, SportsIllustrated.com, along for the ride here on your latest Locked On Browns. Appreciate you all for being along for the ride. Everybody, we appreciate everybody makes Locked On Browns their first listen. The everydayers, you guys are the best. The new traffic rolling through. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Locked On Browns. Obviously, notifications on audio side, wherever you get your podcast. You can always find Locked On Browns. It's always available. It's always free. Now, we did get some speaking today, Pete. Obviously, defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz got a little bit from Denzel Ward here. And, Denzel, hey, that's one you got to be a little bit careful of because you never know if that one could possibly come back to bite you. But now this is from, Matt Fontana. Jim Schwartz wasn't holding anything back. We will rush 5 at times. We will drop a guy occasionally, but we will play down 5, and that goes back to the corners. He doesn't have the confidence to go down 5 unless he has the belief in his secondary. And as of this point, and what he's got back there, and look, obviously it has to do with bringing in Juan Thornhill. It has to do with players like Greg Newsome and Martin Emerson playing with a player like Denzel Ward. Certainly Denzel Ward Grant Delpit equates into that. But Pete, basically what he's telling you is, I want to harass the living daylights out of the quarterback. If we don't get him to the ground, most likely we've put the quarterback in a position where he's either going to throw into coverage, he's going to throw rushed, he's going to throw late. I'm either going to sack the quarterback or I want the opportunity to pick him off.
Yeah, there's a lot there. And I wish there could have been some follow-up questions. If he wants to play a true 50 front, that's really interesting. The Eagles did that quite a bit this past year. But he also may want to do what you call a mug front, where you'd have, your 4 defensive linemen and the linebacker down sort of, up there, like that could potentially drop or rush. And that would be a throwback to something Joe Woods did quite a bit in 2021. It was really successful, where you'd basically take your linebacker, put them over with him, it was always over a guard. You'd have a defensive tackle over the center, another one over the guard, and then the ends over the tackles. So you'd end up with like an overloaded side where everybody gets a one-on-one matchup. Even if the linebacker drops into space, that guard had to at least be honest to the linebacker potentially being a threat. So
takes away the chip ability. Yep.
Right.
To help,
so like you take out a lineman doing that, or at least, force them to be honest to it and put them at a significant disadvantage. But if he wants to do a true 50 front, that's really interesting because that would suggest that they believe they have enough dudes and they have dudes that can win one-on-one matchups. And obviously they have to feel great about Myles Garrett, Obanya Okoronkwo, and Zadarius Smith, but they need more dudes to be able to do that. Can Maurice Hurst stay healthy? Can Jordan Elliott be functional? Can Alex Wright step up and do something from the interior? Like, they have all these different guys that could do it. But if that's the case, great. But that would suggest that they are realizing my dream that linebackers don't matter and people can shut up because they don't matter. They're kind of useful. They're cute. They do some things. I like JOK. I like Anthony Walker. But after that, I don't care. They don't, passing situation. You want your DBs on the field. That's sort of the deal. So, it just makes me think they're not going to carry that many. They may only carry 5 because you can use your practice squad as an extension of that anyway. So that part is intriguing to me. You're essentially saying we're going to put our money on the field. We're going to put our investments on the field, which is what you should want anyway. Put your dudes on the field and let them go make plays and stop worrying about positions that are sort of more correlative as opposed to impact, which is what your DBs and your defensive line should be.
Now, and look, and we've, as many times as Pete and I talked together over the years, you want ridiculously fast secondary guys with coverage ability, and you want big dudes, chubby dudes who can move and, create havoc and crush a pocket or rush from the outside. That's ideally what you're looking for personnel wise. If you want to put a linebacker, and you've heard us say before, do we really need a linebacker on the field? We just go ahead and throw out a safety at the linebacker position. You can do that as well. But you get to Denzel Ward. Now, Denzel Ward's quote today, he's speaking a little bit, obviously, about Jim Schwartz, and he feels that Coach Schwartz's scheme is hopefully will not require the verbiage back and forth, as much verbiage back and forth as it did last year, the system, which caused for a lot of communication breakdown in Denzel's mind. Coach Schwartz's scheme will basically take away a lot of the what ifs.
Well, so when I see this, my immediate thought is that means the Browns aren't going to run as many read coverages, where you could potentially be reading 2-1, and then depending on what one does, it's going to change what two the safety does,
Yes.
for example, which
wasn't the best thing in the world when you had a safety who wasn't an uber athlete and you were trying to play him as a traditional free safety.
Well, I mean, it's just like the idea. I don't like the idea that like you're saying that's like a problem as if that's some super complicated thing to do. It's not. High schools do that all over the country. They run plenty of read coverages and they can do it very well. But it does follow with the style that Jim Schwartz wants to play, seemingly, which is as fast as humanly possible. The less thinking that the secondary has to do, the faster they can play. And we've talked about this, using the front to do your to trick the protection with stunts, all that stuff. You can still do that fast while giving the offense something else to consider. But I mean, whether it's less read type coverages or just using man more, but I mean, obviously they use cover 3 and some of these cover 1 and some of these other things. It's great. As I've said from the beginning, you can do that when you have the personnel up front and you have dudes that get after the passer like the Browns seemingly do right now. If you did what Jim Schwartz is talking about and you didn't, he would be run out of town by about week 6, because it's the same thing over and over and over again. And I know people will point to the efficiency of how well the Browns were in man coverage last year, and I get it, but that's with the benefit of having the other things mixed in. And the EPA of them in zone was really bad. That's because they had those massive coverage breakdowns. So it's going to look worse. But if you're just doing man over and over and over again, and you can't get that pressure, it's going to get beat. Of course. It's a great defense when you have the dudes. The Browns seemingly have the dudes.
But, as you mentioned, and as you said, you need other things to hit. There's got to be more, a little bit more of an interior pass rushing presence. Is that person here on this roster? Is that person going to step up? Is that person waiting in the wings for the possibility of being brought in? All things will, to see, obviously wait and see approach on that type of stuff. And, you look at it, the secondary, you have, just, we talk about the prime 5, so to speak, but you still have players like Thomas Graham. You still have players, obviously the cornerback Broad was running from the Falcons with a great special teams ability. Cam Mitchell, who comes in here and obviously has a good track record for himself. And you're going to be able to, rotate in as you need, and you're going to continue to be able to put talent on the field and guys who have, what do you need? Coverage ability. No, you don't want to go man every single day. Eventually, you can Russian roulette yourself with that. You truly can, because, once it's, consistently, one guy on one guy, if your head's not in the right spot, you can lose a lot of one-on-one balls. Eventually man on man will take you down. You're not going to win every single battle. We understand that. But the thing is when you have great athletes, you have great talent, you have guys who make plays on the ball, you want to give them the opportunity to do that. And that's why Pete and I talk like we do about defensive back play, is because you want to get these guys dialed in. And, a guy wins a one-on-one rep, man one-on-one rep early in a game, a defensive back becomes dialed in, engaged, ready to go. It's just basically it's such a mentality for them that all of a sudden it sets the tone for the day. You get beat early, and then all of a sudden, and we've seen it a million times, all of a sudden you get that one-off game where you have a great cornerback who all of a sudden gave up 5 for 125 and a score. So you try to get them going early, get them feeling better, feeling as top confident as they can be, and then they can go out there and hopefully be the playmakers. And then if you got to shift to some zone, they still have the mentality. The fire is still there. They're trying to get their hands on every single ball that they can. But look, Jim Schwartz's point is, I want to play aggressive. I want to get after quarterbacks. I want to create turnovers. And, after what we saw last year, where a lot of it was sit back and get punched in the face on a 13-play drive, this is, what you want to hear. It's refreshing to hear it. He is Pete Smith, Browns Digest, SportsIllustrated.com. Pete and his team over there, they do a fantastic job. Tons of content every single day. If you are not checking it out to this point, my God, you certainly need to. Make sure you're following @_Pete Smith_. Myself, Jeff Lloyd, @Jeff_LJ_Lloyd. the show Locked On Browns, obviously, on YouTube. To all the everydayers, be like the everydayers. Make sure you're subscribed. You get your notifications on. Locked On Browns, audio-wise, always available, always free, wherever you get your podcast. We just had Jake Burns. We had Pete Smith today. We'll continue out here through the week. As we always say, this has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on the LOB. Let's go Browns.